You're listening to the All Systems Go podcast, the show that teaches you everything you need to know to put your business on autopilot. Learn how to deploy automated marketing and sales systems in your business the right way with your host, the professor of automation himself and founder of Automation Bridge, Chris Davis.
Welcome to the All Systems Go podcast. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, the founder of Automation Bridge, an online resource, a website for small business automation, where we focus on turning digital marketing professionals into automation service providers. In this episode, I want to discuss a trap, and I have to be the first to say I have fallen victim to many times, and many of you listening more than likely have as well. And I want to expose both the trap and the cheese so you can avoid this pitfall and keep getting the most out of your automation. Before we jump into it, let me just say, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. Welcome home, in fact. And what I want you to do is listen to this episode in its entirety. At the end, if you find value, which I'm sure you will, make sure you subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review. For those of you who are listeners to the podcast, first off, thank you for your continual listenership. And if you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you subscribe to the All Systems Go podcast. We're in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can subscribe on YouTube and anywhere where you get your podcasts. While you're at it, your 5-star rating and review is greatly appreciated. If for whatever reason you can't figure out how to leave a review, we've made it simple for you. You can go to automationbridge.com/review and leave a review there. All right, on to the topic at hand. Okay. I talk a lot about keeping things simple and not automating too early. Don't over automate. All of these things, right, have been themes on the podcast. And achieving functional automation for any business requires a delicate balance. Okay. If you're not clear on where to start, maybe you're trying to identify what can be automated and what shouldn't be, along with balancing out who to hire to do it. Should you do it? Should you hire someone else to do it? What's the time cost in training someone else? Okay, I'll just jump in and do it myself. Wait a minute. How do I do it? Right. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself thinking that you can, and you'll end up trying to automate everything. Right. Or at least more than you should. It's very common when you don't understand how to properly leverage automation. It's very easy for you to abuse automation. Right. If you don't know how to use it, it's easier for you to abuse it because you don't understand the boundaries and how to operate within those boundaries healthily. So instead of achieving a nice balance of human and automation, you end up erring on extremities. Right. So on one end, you're just like, look, it doesn't work. I'm doing no automation. On the other end, you're like, let's automate everything. Let's do this. Can we even automate that? Can we automate a conversation? Right. And it's this erroneous approach to business automation that leads people down an unfortunate path of failure for automation. And it's common to hear myself and select others, very few select others, talk about the danger of over automating your business, right? Trying to figure out how to have technology do everything while you just sit back and collect a check. And I would submit to you, if that's something that you want to do, you really should reevaluate the type of business that you're building. Right. Like if you don't want to have anything to do with it, not to say there's anything wrong with that. Some of you like the thrill of building a business and it generating and you doing nothing. That's fine. But for most small businesses that I meet, small business owners, there's some type of passion. You get some thrill from the impact that your business makes. So in that realm, why are you trying to have nothing to do with it? Right. The focus is really on how you want to operate in it, right? So by now you already know that, hey, automate everything and sit back on the beach with your pina colada and cash a check every day of the week, right? You already know that's a pipe dream. And those who can do that, by the way, I have met people who literally can do that. But guess what? They also have people on staff, right? They've got systems in place. They've got years of legacied processes, right, that have proven time and time again. So is it possible? Yeah, but there's an asterisk by that. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Okay. And remember this, I never want you to forget this. And if this is your first time hearing it, remember it from this time on. One of the primary goals of automation is to provide you with a choice of how you want to operate in or on your business. That's the goal. That is the goal, right? I'm putting these systems in place, these automated systems in place, so I can have the free will and free choice to say, you know what, today I want to do this in my business. Today I want to do this on my business, but never today I have to. Right. You know, and I slouched over when I said have to, because sometimes that's how it feels. It feels like the job, your business is just another job. So automation is here to free you from that. So people, you know, again, we talk about over automation, but people often over automate in a few ways. And I'm going to go through a few of them. And one is what I want to focus on for this podcast. I want to focus on one in particular. So starting with the first one, what is the first thing that causes people to over automate? Premature processes. That's the first one. You don't know what needs to be done or how, but you know you want it automated, right? I cannot count to you how many times somebody without any kind of web presence and any kind of experience online says, hey, look, I need to learn this automation thing. You know you want something automated, but you don't know what it is. You don't know your needs. So you have I say premature process, but these are like non-existent processes, honestly. Right. So you know that you want automation, but you don't know what you need or how to do it per se, because you haven't done it. That automating should not be on your list of things to do. Another one is too much technology. We've talked about this. Oh my goodness. What about the last podcast episode? I hope that one drove it home. But in this respect, you have a tool for everything, yet nothing is working. I can't count the amount of people who are out here buying software for their business that have no right. And then when they tell you about they're excited about all the good deals that they have, and you see all kind of overlap, like you realize you just bought 3 LMS tools. They're just named differently. You didn't get that? Yeah, I just got Fresh LMS. Then I got Learner's online course. And then I got this. And it's like, what are you going to do with 3 LMS systems? Like, I should say 3 LMSs. What are you going to do with that? And they have no idea. They just paid 3 times for the same thing. Right. So you have a tool for everything. And that's on the person who doesn't understand technology. I'm not going to let you off the hook, those of you who are tech savvy, because you've got all of this technology. You love playing with the latest tech, right? But you love playing with the latest tech more than you love getting results. And you can build beautiful stuff on a drop of a dime. But when someone puts you on the spot to actually produce something, your knees start knocking. Sweat starts, your forehead starts precipitating, right? So that's number 2. Number 3 is what I call crystal balling. Okay. Trying to cover every case and possibility of the future with automation. Okay. This is the term that we're going to use on the All Systems Go podcast is crystal balling. Okay. And I want to focus on that. The crystal ball, that is the trap to automation. And here's what I mean. And I can't remember. I may have shared this on the podcast before, but when I was learning how to program in college, I was learning JavaScript. No, I'm sorry. I was learning Java, the object-oriented language Java. And we were given a task in our final to create a game. And what I didn't understand code at the time. I didn't understand object-oriented modules, passing variables between objects, and really how code is supposed to do the majority of the thinking and heavy lifting for you, right? So I was sitting here, and it was maybe a 8x8 square grid for this game that I was creating. And I was trying to code for every pattern. Okay, if they go up 1 over 2, I need to write a line for a code for that. What if they go up 3 over 1? What if they go up 4 over 1? And before you know it, I had pages and pages of code. And it took me to go talk to my friend Hen, and he was looking at this. He looked at my code and looked at me. And if there were ever a look on a person's face that said, "You've got to be the dumbest person I know. You should not go burn your computer." His look said all of that. He said not one word, but he looked at my code and looked at me, and I felt about as small as a little ant. But you know what? He gave me some grace and walked me through. He said, "Chris, this is too many." Anyways, he showed me that I needed to approach it differently. So that's what I did. And I started to build it to where the software could calculate the pattern. So if it was on the edge, don't let it go to the edge, right? And if it's over here, let it move +1 in whatever direction. And it changed. I don't know the terminology for it, but it changed my entire approach. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, my code went from like 20 pages to like 2. No joke. It was clean. It was effective. It was easy to follow. And perhaps that's why I am the way that I am now with automation and documentation and modularity in building. So what if you think about it, this is where Easter eggs and glitches in software games come from, right? Where you can do a particular pattern that is unaccounted for and get something that you weren't supposed to get. Right. I think now the gamers call it cheese, like they call them cheesers or whatever the terminology is now. We just call them cheaters back when I was playing video games. But I think now it's cheese when you figure out how to abuse the system. Well, why is that? The reality is, remember, we're talking about crystal ball in here. You can't account for every step someone will or can take ever in life. Let alone in technology. How many times have you seen somebody using a tool a way that you are like, oh, I guess you could use a presentation platform to write email copy and then put it in your autoresponder? I would have never thought to do that, but okay, right? Like, people use technology and things that they don't understand in ways that you wouldn't imagine. And then you've got the people who are literally trying to find holes in your stuff, right? Whether it be a video game, your funnel online software, whatever the case is, right? People like to push the limits. So if you can't account for every step someone will or can take, this is why crystal balling becomes a trap. Because what we start to think that, okay, I've got this much automation in place. Let me take it further. There will be nothing that they can do. And let me say this. I am a proponent of being proactive and building out the journey before the contact goes through it. I'm on record for saying there should be no unanticipated step that someone can take in throughout the customer journey. For every action, there should be an automated reaction or an intentional manual reaction. I'm on the record for saying that. And that's why I felt like today was so important, because all the time that I was saying that, I knew there was an asterisk to it, but I never spoke to it. So I want to speak to it now. Okay. And what I want to do is help you approach the engineering and building of the customer journey by way of automation in a way that you don't fall into this trap. Okay. So the Pareto principle does apply here. Okay. That's the 80-20 rule, right? So your goal from here on out, everybody, is to focus on ensuring up to 80% of the journey is automated. That's the max where we never were. But if you needed a specific number, you're not trying to automate 100% of the journey. At best, you'll be at 80%. Rule of thumb, everybody, just a rule of thumb. Okay. The other 20%, sometimes less, will encompass the outliers. Okay. So we're getting close to the trap and the cheese, everybody. So we've got the trap, right? Trying to forecast out and plan for every output, every pathway, everything that somebody can do and match that with automation. That's the trap. Where's the cheese? The outliers, people who find holes along the journey. So you've just built out a process. You feel good about it. It's been running. Then you get an email. Hey, why did I get this email? Or, hey, I clicked this link, or hey, this, hey, that, right? And these are holes, right? And I'm using air quotes when I say holes, because these holes can either be oversights. It could be something that you're like, oh, thank you. I forgot to do that, right? The holes could be that, right? Or, and most of the time, they come from steps taken multiple times and or out of sequence. And we talked about the one question to ask to make your automation building stronger. And that is, what happens if they go through this again, right? What happens if they opt in again? That repeated path is what we look at. So a lot of times that repeated path can be an oversight, or simply just something that we're just like, we can't account for somebody downloading one lead magnet 10 times, right? Or people just going out of sequence. You registered. What about this, everybody? When someone joins your, let's say, your free membership area or paid membership area, and all of the resources that they need for your business are in that membership area, yet they go and register for your webinar, they download your lead magnet, right? And it's just like, it's these cases that it's the cheese, everybody. And it's never ending. And they're always going to be outliers. Okay. It's these outliers that provide the cheese for the trap that many fall victim to. It's a pipe. You're chasing something you can't catch. You're not going to be able to encompass every single output. Okay. So maybe let me just pause. Does that give you a form of relief? You know, like maybe you were thinking, maybe you're beating yourself down because these outliers keep showing their head, and you're thinking like, okay, wait a minute. Now let's just go in and add this flow or add this action, right? And they just keep, what is that, whack-a-mole? They just keep popping their heads up. You know, you're going to be able to get some of them, but some of those, you can't, you're not perfect. Right. And it's easy to think these outliers are indicators of areas we need to apply more automation to. I told you, trapping the cheese. We can easily get sucked into this, especially if our funnels and processes and customer journey are exemplary in our industry. I'm at nobody has to tell me. I know there are people that go to my website and they just want to opt in. And, you know, I could tell by the email addresses they submit. They want to see the thank you page, what happens next, you know, just nosy, which is fine. I'm nosy too. Marketing online is public marketing. It's for everybody to see, right? So I get it. However, me doing that, or, you know, just spying, that is not an indicator that somebody needs to put more automation in place to handle people who are coming by that just want to look and not buy, right? At some point, you just have to take a step back and say, you know what? I'm not going to be able to cater to everybody. Right. And as exemplary as I am in business, where I know people are coming and looking and saying, oh, well, he doesn't have this. Oh, what if somebody does that? I'm very aware. There is not a whole lot that somebody can tell me that I'm not fully aware of. And if you thought I wasn't, perhaps you're not giving me the credit of intentionality with everything. Go on my website, there's a reason why there's certain links in the header and ones are not, right? There's certain resources that you cannot easily come across. Do you think this was just a major oversight on my behalf? No, it was very intentional, right? But with that being said, even with an understanding that, no, I'm a figure and I'm an example that people follow, I'm still not going to be able to handle the outliers with automation. It's just not real. And what I want you to do is, I want to prevent you from the temptation of doing it and show you how. Okay, so we've identified the trap in the cheese. Let's see how we can never fall victim to it, right? And there's a few considerations that will help you. Okay, one is think about how often this happens and if you foresee it being an issue going forward, right? Sometimes things seem big now, and that's the temptation. That outlier, they see, you know what it is. Let me say, people who are automation prone and just ready to build automation, we love outliers because outliers just give us another reason to build. It's like a hammer and a nail. Oh, another nail. Let me go grab a hammer. Right? There is an element to that. The outlier is like, oh, a hole. Let me go patch that. You know, but you have to pause and say, okay, how often has this happened? Right? Up until now, how often has it happened? And what went into creating this? And do I see it as an ongoing issue? Right? So that's one consideration. And taking a step back and asking those questions and thinking through, you'll be able to pause and say, okay, let me wait until a pattern evolves, right? Like, let me make sure that before I take an action on applying some automation, let me just make sure that there's a pattern here. Maybe this is an outlier. Maybe it happens 1 or 2 times a year. Okay, no harm, no foul, right? Next, I want you to consider what's the effort required for someone to take care of it. And by someone, I mean a human. I'm not talking about technology in the terms of a person. What's that effort? Because guess what? Sometimes these outliers seem big and they're tempting to automate. But then when you think through like, okay, let me just have my VA, let me have my assistant, let me have my XYZ handle this, it becomes really small. It's interesting. It's just like ideas and thoughts and all of those. They seem much bigger in our head until we start writing them out. It could feel like you're walking around with all of these ideas and all of these things to do, and it gets so weighty. You're like, man, I've got like a million things to do. Let me start writing them down. And you write them down and you get to the 5th one and you're like, where's the other 999,000? 995,000, right? I thought I had 1 million, it felt like. But the reality is it was bigger in your head than it existed outside of it. So when we have these outliers and we say, okay, let me have somebody do it, what it does is it removes the size of it from our head and it makes it real. And then when we start to say, okay, my manager would have to do this, this, and that. Oh, it's just an email, right? Like just update an email. We don't need an entire process for that, right? I should say an entire automated process for that. I just need to let them know when this happens to do that. I mean, that's it. Right? Which brings me to the last consideration is that automation really, and I've got really, like when I say really, if I could illustrate it, like really would be in bold and like all caps, right? Is that automation really just an easy update? And this is where we have to be honest with ourselves, because I'm going to tell you the answer. Don't worry. You don't even have to answer this one. It's not. There, very rarely does an outlier pop up that's not a hole, like something that, like, I should say that's not an oversight. I'm not talking about the oversights, because the oversights, yeah, you go in and you patch that hole. I'm talking about out of sequence, out of the process. They found a Easter egg in your system, right? The more complex that system is, the less that automation is just an easy update. Okay. And you have to be honest with yourself, because that automation is tied to a whole lot. And guess what? To update it, you've got to go visit. Now I'm going to talk to those who are responsible. You've got to go visit your map to see what it's connected to, what it does before and after. Right? Then go into the automation and update it. Then you got to test it and try to test it in the context in which people will be flowing through it. So it's not that easy to update. And one change to a functional system can propagate throughout that system and have unforeseen issues and impacts. And this is why it's a trap, because it's so tempting to look at those outliers as it, like, oh, gotta update, right? And then it's even more easy to think that automation or that automated flow is just an easy update. Something else is going to break somewhere else. That's just the nature of it. So what I like to do, and what I've done in the past that has saved me time and time again, everybody, I cannot count how many times this has saved me, is those outliers can be handled with an internal system that reminds or assigns team members on what to do. Okay. That way you're still using automation, but you're not modifying the process. You're modifying how people go through the process. So one of my favorite things to do is when I see an outlier and I don't know, it's not an oversight, but I don't know if this is a pattern or not. You know what I'll do, everybody? I'll put action in my automation to send a notification. Now I have a gauge. Depending on how many notifications I get, it's like, look, we need to revisit this process and put something in place, because I'm getting like 10 notifications a week. That means this is not an outlier. It is now an oversight, right? But imagine if you put that in place and you only got 1 or 2 emails or notifications every quarter. Is it really worth building out some risking that you can modify a working system for something that's only happening a few times? Just train somebody on your team. Hey, look, I'm going to start sending these notifications to you. And when it happens, when you get this notification, do this. And the reason why I like that is because you can even be descriptive in the notification. We've talked about this in the podcast before, but you can write a mini SOP in the notification, right? And now it's being taken care of. But if there's anything I want you all to hear is when you get to the point where your systems are 80% operational, it should be hands off, not to show off like, look what I can do. It should be hands off, because at 80% operational and producing profit, you do not want to be messing and tinkering with that system. I'm telling you all, once the system is running and working, leave it alone. Leave it alone. You don't start out at 80%. So it's still true to don't set it and forget it, or you will regret it too early, right? Once you get up to 80% operational, like 80% of your processes and operations, up to whatever that threshold is, once you get there, leave it alone. Don't touch it. Oh my goodness, don't touch it. Okay? A lot of times what I found is that when systems are built and functioning really powerfully, you don't need to adjust the system for optimization. You need to adjust the input. Optimize the input. Okay? So I hope this helped frame this trap, because again, I don't need anybody to raise their hand and say, Chris, this is me, because my hand has been up practically this whole podcast. If there's one thing that I have done more consistent than others, it's this. And the reason for me is I always treated those outliers as an opportunity to build out another system. And that's fine if I'm in exploratory mode and I'm bringing that knowledge back to the community and sharing, hey, this happened, because an outlier in one business could very much be a hole in another. So I'm always in this dichotomy of I can do it for other people's businesses, but don't do it for your business, right? So I can look at outliers in other people's businesses and build automation for those, and then bring it to someone else's business. And they're like, oh my gosh, this solved a problem. But I've got to be very disciplined to not fall into that trap for myself. And I don't want you to fall into that trap either. So it does. It requires some expertise to get operational. It requires some skill to know what you're doing, but it also requires some discipline to say, you know what, let's wait. Let's see if a pattern evolves here. Let's see if this is a thing. Because if not, we'll just move on. Okay, we'll put that notification in place. Now let's see how many times we get the notification. Right? We get the notifications. All right. That's the indicator that we probably need to revisit this thing. And that's it. That's if we're not seeing results from the notification being handled by a person. It's like, well, wait a minute. That's working. Why would I risk that? Right? Because remember, that last 20%, those of you who are trying to automate everything, that last 20%, that can make or break you. That's where you're getting into the over automation piece. And things can get so confusing and so hard to follow. Right? When you keep building out automation and keep adding to it, I'm telling you all, I'm guilty. I've had automations where they have all of these if else's, even modular. I'm trying to, okay, but what if they buy this and then 2 months later they don't, but then they do this? And you build out the automation for that one highly specific case. It does nothing. It does nothing but attempt to solve that one case. And guess what? That one case is only happening once or twice every 3 or 4 months. But now I've just made that automation that much harder to follow for the people who are going through it 98% of the time. So you have to be very careful, everybody. Okay? So I hope this warning and education and insight was valuable to you. Okay? Tell me this. Go think of your fellow marketer, your fellow digital marketer and or advertiser, and the ones who have their fingernails, they've got digital dirt under their fingernails. Okay. They're the builders. They're the ones feet to the ground, right? Think of that person that they build landing pages and email. They write copy, all of those things. Share this with them, especially if they're on your team. Share this with them. It is going to make their life easier. If you're listening to this and somebody shared it, make sure you take heed to this because it's going to make your performance on your job or for your client stronger. It will. It will eliminate the confusion. There's a lot of times where consultants come in and see another consultant's work, and that's threatening, right? Because it's like, wait a minute, why is the CEO bringing someone else in? And then you start hoping they don't see the holes or that it all makes sense and you start getting defensive. Listen, follow the tutelage that you're getting in this podcast and you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine. Okay? So if you found today's episode valuable and this is your first time, this is my official invitation to you. Welcome to the family of listeners to the All Systems Go podcast. There is a seat at the table and it is now time for you to sit down. How do you sit down? By submitting a 5-star rating and review and subscribing. That is how you claim a seat at the All Systems Go table. So this is my invitation to you to do that. Here at Automation Bridge, we're dedicated to training digital marketing professionals to become automation service providers. These are people who are savvy with automation. They don't automate prematurely. They don't over automate, and they definitely don't prescribe technology before defining your strategy. They do automation the right way, and small businesses and enterprises, they're in dire need of these types of marketers that can navigate both the technology and marketing space for the effective deployment of automated systems for rapid growth. So if that's you, if when I said that and while you're listening to this, you're like, oh my God, this is gold. If you're thinking that like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Right. And again, you've got the digital dirt under your fingernails. This is for you. I want to invite you to go to automationbridge.com/ASP. ASP stands for Automation Service Provider. OK, automationbridge.com/ASP. On that page, I want you to take the next steps to schedule some time to talk with someone, myself or someone on my team, to assess if you would be a good fit for one of our upcoming programs. Okay, where you get the training you need to provide you your shortcut to success in automation. Learn proven practices on how to do it the right way. Get the support, accountability, exposure, and ongoing coaching and training that you need. So go to automationbridge.com/ASP. Let's see if you're a good fit for one of the programs that we offer. And the time is now. And the need has never been greater. Okay. I'm seeing it with my own eyes. I've got a community of the knowledge share. The knowledge share in the community right now is at an all-time high. And I don't anticipate it dropping anytime soon. I'm really excited about that. So if you like to be a guest on the podcast, or you have a guest you would like to refer, please visit automationbridge.com/guest and submit your or their information for them to come on the podcast. I am going to do the best that I can to ask the questions that will extract the most amount of information for you all. Got great feedback on the previous episode with Mike, where we talked about Amazon, and they were just like, man, there is so much that I learned. Well, I'll do my due diligence. If you send somebody to be a guest on the podcast, trust me, I'm going to ask the right questions because I have you in mind, and I want to extract from their brain processes, strategies, things that's working for your good. Deal? All right. All the show notes and podcasts are accessible at automationbridge.com/podcast. You can subscribe there to listen to other episodes at your leisure. And you can also get access to anything, any of the resources mentioned, anything that we've mentioned in terms of somewhere to go, a tool to use, or just a resource. It's all there. automationbridge.com/podcast. So until next time, I see you online. Automate responsibly, my friend.